What up, artists? My name is Dwayne Jones. I'm the creative director and founder of a lifestyle brand called Art Pays Me. This is the Art Pays Me podcast, and I'm passionate about finding ways that people like you and me can make a living for ourselves off of our creativity. And, maybe we can make the world a better place at the same time. Let's get into it. Welcome to Art Pays Me. Today we have Romana.
Hi.
Romana, what do you do?
I'm an artist. I started to recently call myself an expressionist versus artist. I feel like that describes me a little bit better. But yeah, essentially, I create visual art and music. And I also do a little bit of producing, like producing for events and stuff like that. So I'm basically just channeling my creativity in all the different ways right now.
Right, right. Yeah, so I noticed you, even in the visual art you do, you work across a lot of different styles and mediums.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel sometimes I call it creative ADD. And I feel like a lot of artists that I speak to could relate to this. But yeah, I don't really feel sort of called to one medium all the time. I feel like different messages can can be said differently using a variety of different mediums. And so um, I kind of just, feel into sort of my gut and go with that. I think one of the things that's like beautiful about having an open practice like that um, is that like it to your expression. And because I've never been to school for any sort of like creative practice. So I'm all self-taught. I think I struggled in the beginning to be like, am I doing this right? Like, is this how other people are doing it? And it kind of just morphed into this practice that was truly my own, which I get to make all the rules for. So I do feel really like blessed and grateful um, I mean, to have I guess the talent, of course, is one thing, but I think to have like the chops to be able to take different risks all the time, and play with different mediums.
So what was it like that first time when you took on a project, particularly one that, say, maybe had a client at the other end of it?
Um, I mean, it was terrifying. So I come from the corporate world. You know, I'm South Asian, so my parents were definitely like, go to university, get a corporate job. That was kind of like the plan that was already sort of, set out for me. And being a good Indian girl is what I did. Um, and actually, this Friday is going to be the 5-year anniversary of the day that I quit my corporate job. So it's pretty exciting.
Hey,
Um, yeah. So I, it was like after I had quit that job, I immediately started this custom bridal mehndi or henna company. And so I immediately had clients. And it was interesting because what I was providing was the service that, didn't exist yet. Um, Essentially, when it comes to mehndi design for mehndi design in general, but specifically for weddings, um, there's no rhyme or reason to sort of the design that a bride will get on her hands. It's just, it's kind of random. It's just based on maybe a style that you might like. And so I wanted to I wanted to put something more significant and meaningful into that. So I created this, I never used to call it a business, but I created this business called My Mehndi Story. And what I would do is I would take the story of the bride and the groom's love and put it into the henna design. So I did like lyrics and, the Toronto skyline and all types of stuff that you never really had seen before done
mhm.
in Mehndi. And so, yeah, like immediately after I left the corporate world, I had clients. So, um, but it was definitely terrifying because I think the one thing about working with clients, especially ones that are paying you, is that you kind of you have to take direction, which is not always easy for me, and it's not easy for a lot of artists. Um, and then you have to actually like listen to their criticism. So, uh, I mean, and luckily, I was never really scrutinized by my clients. But it is definitely challenging to know that at the end of a service, your clients are going to give you feedback. And sometimes it could be good, and sometimes it's not going to be that great. So,
Yeah. 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 So actually, I want to take it a step back. How are you coping with this COVID-19 stuff?
um, I mean, it definitely has not been easy, that's for sure. So where I'm at right now in my creative practice is um, I am creative. I'm actively creating music, but my bread and butter comes from the murals that I do, and so I do murals for a bunch of different corporate clients. Um, Essentially, I like to tell the stories of companies and sort of like create something unique and cool for people to look at while they're at work. And obviously, all of that has stopped. And I don't actually see that becoming something that is sort of imperative for businesses in the near future either. So my business, or kind of how I was making money, immediately halted
Right.
because, like, of course, like offices got shut down. And I predominantly work in the tech space, with startups, and startups closed. I feel like the tech startups were the first to close, at least in Toronto. So it's definitely been a struggle, but it's been. I mean, I think after I got over the fact that this is a real thing that was happening, I have every week, or I don't even know what week we're in, but I am finding many silver linings, which is beautiful. But from a financial perspective, it has not been easy at all.
Right. Right. What field did you work in before you focused on art?
I started out in marketing, and then I moved into sales, and then I went back to marketing. So I had a few corporate jobs, but I always stayed within sales and marketing.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So not super creative, but I guess somewhat strategic, which you still definitely need when you are creating visual art or creating music. Um, I think a lot of artists actually don't view that as a business, but it definitely is. And so I'm definitely glad that I had that experience, because I've learned a lot that I can now sort of use in this business that I'm working in.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a superpower because I talk to a lot of artists, and one of the challenging things is they have all this talent and don't know how to get it out there to people. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So um, in terms of, you said you came from like a traditional South Asian family. Were you always sort of creative, just into all kinds of different things as a kid?
Yeah, totally. I was definitely like a very imaginative and like super high energy child. Um, and even when I was younger, I have a memory actually of being in JK, and so I think you're four in JK, and like a painting that I had created being picked to sort of be like showcased around the school. And so it was interesting, at a very early age, I was definitely showing signs of like being super artistic and creative. The challenge, I think, back then was, I didn't come from a family where the arts were celebrated. So it was kind of like, oh, that's cool, but don't forget to do your math homework. And so where I grew up, it was definitely, math, science, English, whatever, was kind of the thing to be good at, and then everything else was kind of something you did as an extracurricular after you finished your math homework. Um, and so it was actually, like, it was kind of a struggle actually growing up, because I never felt like I was truly myself.
Right.
Um, and I remember, and I don't think I was conscious of it. I think I can say all this in hindsight. But I remember becoming like super obsessed with fashion, and I think looking back at it, that was probably the way that I was creatively expressing myself. Like, my contacts had to match my shoelaces, and it was like very all about the details, all about the fashion. Um, and so for me, in hindsight, it makes sense, because I had all this creativity inside of me that I didn't have an outlet for.
Mhm.
Um, and so even though I wasn't able to really create, or create freely back then, I found other ways to channel that expression.
Right. Right. So like you're super eclectic and your music's got like this 90s R&B vibe. Who would you say kind of influenced that sound?
Um, I mean, I definitely grew up listening to 90s music. I definitely would say Aaliyah, um, like obviously like Whitney, Mariah, all the divas. And then recently, Snow Allegra. I love her. I feel like she's kind of doing something similar as well, and you know, bringing back that like that soulful 90s sound.
Mhm.
But I would say my number one idol growing up was definitely Aaliyah. I mean, and not just really her sound, but even just everything she stood for and how she carried herself. I remember once in an interview, she called herself street but sweet, and I was like, oh my god, I love that. Because it's kind of, I mean, I think a lot of people are doing this now, but it's kind of like it's you can be masculine and feminine at the same time, and that's okay.
Mhm.
And Aaliyah definitely did that. I think not just musically, but in the way she showed up in the world. So that's definitely always been something that's inspired me.
Yeah, that's true. That's funny because she did always. I mean, she had that edge, but you still got a sense that she was a good girl. Like it was just an interesting dynamic that you picked.
Yeah, yeah, and I think like back then it was, I think it was the type of role model like young women needed, right?
Yeah,
And so I think she definitely stood for so much more than just her music, which is definitely why I was inspired by her, not just musically, but as a human.
right. So your single is Holding Space.
Yeah.
What's the significance of that to you?
So I'll tell you why I created it, which might actually answer the question. So I got a phone call from someone, and they kind of like talked my ear off for like an hour. Sometimes people call you and they just talk about themselves for a really long time. So it was one of those calls, and then at the end they were like, "Okay, I gotta go. I'll call you back." And so I didn't get a word in at this point, and I was like, "Okay, cool." And I hang up, and I felt so drained and so like out of it. And I had this moment where I was like, "Wow, like I just took on that person's shit, and it doesn't feel good. It feels actually really tiring. I need to take a bath." Like all these things were coming up.
Mm,
Um, and when they called back, I didn't pick up. I was like, I can't, I literally don't have this space to hold for you right now. And that was it. I was like, whoa, I don't think that I don't think this experience is unique. I'm sure a lot of people have this. And so I was like, I'm just going to go write a song about this. And that's kind of how it was born. So it's definitely like, it's a song about like acknowledging, um, that as humans, we have like we're energy, and we only have a finite amount of space in our beings, and it's important to create emotional, physical, mental, spiritual boundaries around your space and your time and your energy. And I think I know women have this problem, especially women of color. Like I think it's really challenging for us to say no.
mm.
We've been taught to sort of say yes to everything, and so the song excuse me, the song definitely um, I think it definitely empowers people to also say no to things that are not serving them.
Right. So with that said, like, do you often feel pressure as a woman of color to sort of uh, put the the weight of society and oppression and all that kind of stuff like on your shoulders?
I mean, less today than I might have a year ago or 2 years ago, but yeah, I mean, culturally, I come from a South Asian background, and so in our culture, women are sort of there's so many expectations of us. There's so many things we can and we cannot do. There's just there's a lot that we have to take on just by virtue of being women in this community. And so it almost felt like I was born into this this thing that I didn't even get to create for myself.
Right.
And of course I'm learning a lot of that now, and it's beautiful that my parents are open enough to be okay with that, and we're having great conversations. But growing up, I didn't feel, I mean, that's part of the reason why I went to university, right? Because like I was told that I had to.
Mm,
um, and so there were so many things that growing up I was told that I had to do. Um, and and I don't I don't remember men or boys, especially while I was growing up, having to have to do the same thing. I don't really think that that's changed a lot. I definitely have seen some changes in my community specifically. So we are starting to make a difference by speaking up and, creating space for these conversations. But um, I definitely didn't feel that when I was growing up. But I will say that I'm doing my work to sort of like reclaim my power, and definitely starting to feel a little bit more in control now than ever before.
Yeah, I get that. As a black man, I grew up in Bermuda, and uh, like there's this weird dynamic that happens too, where yes, black men are oppressed and have a lot of things against us, like societally wise, but then black women often end up coming to our defense, and we're not always coming to their defense. And
Right.
sometimes they end up being a stepping stool for us to kind of elevate ourselves. So
Mm,
I try to reverse a lot of that. I mean, just like it's still, I'm surprised in 2020 still happens today, where we'll say it's okay for a man to do certain things, and then when a woman does it, her value is somehow less. And
yep.
um, yeah, I really actively think that we need to work against those double standards in society. Um, yeah, so you're having this weekly interview series called Holding Space that I'm guessing echoes everything you talked about.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things that felt super important to me, specifically about this single, um, was sort of like the education piece that, it's not very obvious in the song, but I do feel like I'm trying to, teach people, that they can say no, or that they don't have to pick up a call. And I wanted to, pre-COVID, create some sort of pop-up experience, where I would be able to demonstrate and illustrate what holding space actually is and how it affects different people in different communities. And obviously, since that's not happening anymore, because I don't know when events will happen again, I decided to sort of take that conversation and bring it online. Um, and so, yeah, the intention is to um, sit down and chat with other people, artists, people who are authentic, and have a conversation about how they're holding space in their lives, whether it's as artists or moms or, like women, people of color. I think holding space is something that people do every day, always, all the time, in the name of love and friendship. And um, I definitely think having a conversation about it, is sort of, I think it's just like bringing it into people's awareness that this is a thing that we've been doing like always. And I'm doing my second one tomorrow. The first one was super amazing. We had some great conversation. And at the end of the session, we do like a performance sort of like segment, and it's where I hold space for them or they hold space for me to perform. And I'll be performing my single, and I give them the opportunity to share or perform something. So yeah, I mean, I feel super excited about it. I feel I've gotten a lot of great feedback, a lot of people resonating, a lot of people, saying things like, I never thought of it like that. So it definitely feels like, I definitely feel like I'm doing what I intended to do, and that, giving people a new perspective on sort of like their emotions, their energy, and sort of like how to protect themselves.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Thank
Um,
you.
like yeah, it's and I love that you pivoted so quickly to something else that sort of captured the same energy of what you're trying to go for pre-COVID. So
I mean, it's definitely different. I don't know if you've done an Instagram live, but it's definitely different to not be able to like feel the energy of the audience and like interact in the same way. But I think for right now, it's kind of like all we got, right? Right.
it's
And I
true.
think as artists, like that's what we do. We solve problems. So
Yeah,
um, yeah, it feels good.
yeah. So I've seen a lot more of your visual art online, but are you more or less new to music? I haven't seen much of your music.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say I'm new to music in that I've been singing since I was like 4. I sort of became like the community, wedding singer at some point, in my
Mm,
early years. And so I've performed a lot. I just never had the confidence and or like resources to actually create my own music. Um, like music creating music or good quality music definitely is not cheap.
mm,
And so I feel like I had to pay my dues. I had to, take on these corporate jobs, save money, do all of that stuff so that I could finally arrive at this place and, have not only like the finances, but, the support network that I needed to finally feel like maybe my voice was worthy of being recorded. And again, like I think that a part of that goes back to, being a woman, being a woman of color. Like there's, and I think also coming from a family and a community that never really celebrated art, there was so much unlearning that I had to do in order to finally arrive and be like, okay, it's time. And so that is why there's not a lot of my work out in the world yet, but I have a whole bunch of stuff that I will be releasing um, as part of my EP. So stay tuned. You will definitely see more.
exciting, exciting. So, like, you also recently had your first solo show as an artist, a fine artist, and it was Masks
Yeah.
and Molds. How did Masks and Molds go, and what was that all about? Sure.
So Masks and Molds was essentially exploring. I would say it's exploring the duality of the lived experience of the South Asian diaspora um, in Canada, and essentially like the concessions that we made to sort of fit in. And so the mask kind of like represented, the different parts of myself that I had been covering up, my whole life essentially to kind of fit into whatever the more predominant culture was at the time. Um, and molds kind of represented these little small spaces that we try to fit into as immigrants, as people of color. So, um, and it was, I mean, it went super well. It was super exciting to, as an artist, be able to share, my perspective, my story, and experience that I had, and these really deep sentiments that I had been feeling for such a long time, and then be met with so much like resonance from other people, and not just in my community, just all different types of people were able to sort of relate to what I was creating. And to me, that's what I think art actually is. It's like the intentional creation of something, visual or beautiful or whatever, in order to create this like emotional experience in people. And that truly showed up and sort of happened through this exhibition, and it was so exciting to have that.
Yeah, that's cool. Congratulations. That's, you know,
Thank you.
it is something to be proud of because not many people A have the courage to do that, and B like would just do it and just have the vision to do it even if they did have the courage. So it's definitely something to be proud of. Um,
Thank you.
Also, I'd love to talk about your festival inspired wedding. The pictures, dope. What was that about?
So we're definitely not your traditional, humans. Like I said, I'm an artist and expressionist. My partner, he owns his own startup, so he's definitely creative and in a different way. And so when we decided that we were going to get married, we knew we weren't going to do something cookie cutter. Like that just wasn't for us. Um, and yeah, we wanted to create an experience that wasn't for us and was actually for our guests. So, we've been to so many weddings in our lifetime. People get married all the time, and there were so many things that we wanted to do differently. But I think the biggest thing was we wanted to create an experience that was actually about other people. And so we wanted to like gift the people that kind of helped us get to this place of being able to commit to each other with this, this beautiful experience of joy and love and all the things. And so that was kind of the intention. It's like, how can we create something that will truly like make people feel happy, but also feel the love that we have, not just for each other, but for all of them. And so, yeah, I had been to Burning Man, and I'd been to a bunch of different, like festivals before. And so we had a lot of ideas already from some of the experiences that we had been a part of. And yeah, we just kind of put together this thing and keeping our intention top of mind. And yeah, this festival, we called it the Bolly Q, was born. And it was so much fun. And obviously I'm biased because it was my wedding, but the feedback that we got from other people, the fact that we were sort of like acknowledged locally and then internationally, obviously was a testament to the fact that, I think we created something that was actually pretty cool. And so, yeah, it was beautiful. And I think the one thing that I really like, outside of the intention for our guests to feel, super loved and happy and included, I definitely wanted to create something that would inspire other people in our community to think about doing things differently. And I think what was beautiful about what we created is that you still felt and saw all the traditional elements of our communities and our culture, but you also got to see something, fun and innovative and unique at the same time. So there is a way to balance both. And I think that's important, especially for our generation as children of immigrants, to feel like we are allowed to try to do some of these things differently, because a lot of the traditions or a lot of the things that our parents did don't really relate to us because we were born in Canada.
Right.
And so, and I think another like a beautiful thing was so many women specifically reached out to me after, and they were like, I'm going to do this for my wedding and I want to do that. And I'm like, yeah, that's amazing. So it felt really great to also have been able to inspire other women in our community to do the same thing.
Right. Right. This is something I struggle with sometimes. I don't even know if it's a struggle or if it's just normal or just a good thing, but do you ever find that like everything you do in life somehow becomes a project or certain things anyway?
Yeah, totally. I feel like I don't know, like I always feel like I'm an activist at heart. So I turn everything into this I turn everything into a platform for change. So that's my thing. And so like even some like not to say that the way I clean my room turns into that, but it does often feel like there's always something deeper than what's at the surface, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
um but I think it's because we're creative. We can't just clean our room. We have to creatively clean our rooms. So that could be why.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say. So if you had like any piece of advice to some, like, what would you give to people?
Um, I think one thing that I would definitely say is, and I think Aaliyah said this first, but age ain't nothing but a number. So I'm 35, and I am now finally pursuing, this career in music, and I don't really feel like I'm late. I don't have regrets at all. And I think it's funny because when I was in my 20s and considering music, I was like, oh my God, I'm too old. And now I'm like, oh, I'm just in time. So I think if there's any advice I'd want to impart, it's that you are never too old to follow your dreams. And I think as long as you're alive and your spirit is alive, you're like, so are your dreams. And so you should definitely go out there and try to make them happen.
Ah, man, I love that so much because
Oh,
I have this habit too. Like, I remember when I was in my 20s thinking when I hit 30, I'm going to be washed. And then I had this feeling of like hitting 40, then I'm going to be washed. And um, I'm 39 now, and every now and then I still catch myself being in this like, I'm too old to be doing this shit. And then I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you're still alive, you still have things to say, so keep saying them. And I think that message is so important because, like, one of the things I when I started this podcast, I find, and there's no shots against young people, but I find that a lot of times in creative circles particularly, there's a lot of worship of youth. And
Hmm.
um it, it does shape the way you think. Like, I see people on Twitter or whatever, and it's like, um, a lot of disrespect to people as soon as they hit a certain age. It's like all of a sudden they're not, their value just decreases. And I don't know, like, I really wanted this podcast to be about not only celebrate, I think young people are great. I want to celebrate young creatives, but I also want to celebrate creatives at all different age groups, because I think that there are a lot of people who have their whole lives said, I can't do this, but you know what? Yes, you can. Like, and you're not too old. You can start today. You can, it's an important message to share. So thank you for reiterating that. Actually,
Yeah, of course.
yeah. So you've got the EP dropping. Any dates for it, or is it kind of up in the air until?
Yeah, so it's definitely a little bit up in the air. It's funny, the first single was actually supposed to drop, I think it was like 8 weeks ago, and I had already uploaded it into into like the distribution platform. It was ready to go, and then Trudeau made this announcement, and he was like, "Oh, we're closing down the borders," and I was like, "Wait, what? Okay, there's like a real thing happening in the world right now. I can't be." Releasing new music, and it had felt wrong to sort of put something out into the world while we were having this, crazy collective experience. And so I waited I waited like 6 weeks from that date, which is why I ended up releasing last week instead. So basically, the plan that I, was kind of following has definitely um, kind of gone up in the air many times since. And so um, I don't have a date yet for the EP. A part of that is I have a track or two that I didn't get to finish, and studios are obviously closed right now, and um, so a lot of it kind of depends on when sort of the city starts to open back up and when I can actually get in the studio with my producers and sort of finish things off. So I am releasing another single that's going to come out in June. Um, and then after that, I want to release one more single. Still not sure in terms of timeline for that, but it'd probably be a month out after that. And then the EP is very much dependent on when I can get back in the studio. But
Mhm.
it's definitely going to happen this year. So I can say that.
Right. Yeah, I feel that. I had all these plans to release products and everything right when this thing dropped, and I was like, oh man, like it felt distasteful to just be,
Yeah.
hey, come buy some things from me. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely tone deaf. That's for sure.
yeah, yeah. Shout out to Rona, man. She's, uh, yeah. I don't know. Part of me is enjoying it, and part of me is like, this thing needs to end for like stuff like this. Like I need.
Same. I'm actually loving it too. I am definitely more of an introvert, so I'm like, I will stay home all day, every day. But now, recently, as the weather has started to get a little bit better in Toronto, um, I'm like, I kind of just want to go to the park. I kind of just want to,
Yeah.
I am starting to feel a little bit more antsy. But when it was cold, I didn't care at all. I was like, I'm always home anyway, so I'm cool. Um,
Exactly.
so yeah, but I think it's going to get harder for most people. I think I don't know if it's like this for you, but I feel like the second the sun comes out, there's like this new energy in the world, and everybody just wants to be out and be social and on patios and all the things. And so I think it's going to be really challenging for cities to keep people inside. It's not going to be possible.
Yeah, we lightened up. I'm in Halifax, and they lightened up some of the restrictions, I think, on Friday, and on
Yeah.
Sunday it was really sunny, and apparently people were out all over the place. So
Yeah. Yeah, we had something similar. Sunday was like it was like our first day of, what felt like could be summer, and everybody was out in the parks. Not in the parks because I think they've actually, yeah, people were in some parks. I don't know how, because I know that they've been sort of like blocking a lot of them off. But yeah, I mean, once we have consistently nice weather, it's going to be really challenging
Yep.
to keep people in their house. One thing that I did see, which I thought was pretty amazing and very Canadian, is people are still wearing masks. People are, so I mean, we're outside and we're enjoying the sun, but I think we're still respecting the fact that this is a real thing. Whereas I've seen some pictures from New York, and that's definitely not happening. So I take pride in the fact that Canadians still are very much down to follow the rules. But they still want to be able to go outside and play.
Yeah, that sun is hard to resist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do we find you online?
You can find me on Instagram. My handle is at Romana, Romana Kassam, Kassam.
Cool. That's it. Thank you for doing Art Pays Me.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Hey, before you go, here's a little snippet from Romana's single, Holding Space.
My cup is full, but you still pour it out on me. I let it happen, no lift from time. I'm overflowing with it, yeah. Space is a gift, yours is unwrapped. I can't keep giving myself like that. So if you call me, I might decline. I gotta take care of me and my time, 'cause my cup is full. It has a cap.
Thank you so much for listening to the Art Pays Me podcast. Thank you to Langy Beats for the theme music. If you got anything out of this show, please rate, review, and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. The more you do this, the more reach the podcast gets, and the more artists I can help learn to make a living at what they love. If you want to know more about what I do, hit me up at artpaysme.com or at artpaysme on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook.